colorism, I would define it as, I guess in simple terms, preferential treatment based on lighter skin. It's not the same as racism, because racism then takes into account the institutionalization and systems of power, whereas colorism is more about the internalization of colonial racial value systems within communities of color, right? This sort of overvaluation of lighter skin. Usually, when you think about colorism, you think about skin tone, but it has a lot to do with also hair texture and features, physical features and things like that as well. Today, one of the easiest places where you see colorism existing is in beauty standards, right? And so this is not only in the US, this is worldwide. If you think about skin bleaching creams that are prevalent in Latin America, even in the US, and even in places like India, right? So if you think about a lot of like sayings, right, or dichos. So I know, like, I do a lot of work in Afro-Latin American communities, but they exist here as well, right? And so like different sayings, for example, telling your child not to marry someone who's dark skinned, or, so even if you are Afro-descendant, right? And so we can think about how a lot of our daily practices and values actually are part of this systematic systematic stratification of skin color. With the Latinx community, it has to do with the US as well in terms of value systems in the US, but part of that history that dates back to this like Spanish casta system, or if you think of Brazil, this notion of, there's a saying that's white to marry, mulata to fornicate or have sex with, and black to do the work, right? And so this notion that from 18th century Brazil, but it still has a legacy, right? Starting out recognizing it, asking yourself the question, like, why don't I want my child to be with a darker person, right? Tons of Afro-Latinx scholars and media figures and entertainers are already doing is representation, right? And then our standards of beauty, what does it take to be successful, like socially and economically successful? And so I think one example is that the experience that Amara Negra had, right? Where she was told that if she wanted to be more famous, if she wanted to sell more records, like be a little bit more Beyonce and a little less Macy Gray. What does that mean for that person, right? And so departing from there, and how can we now put more faces that represent the heterogeneity of humanity, right? And so I think that is a starting point. And then I think really, really, especially because the family is like the primary level of socialization, is that the work we do in family. And so the lighter skinned child might be told more often, you're beautiful, right? And so it's hard to recognize those things, right? Because we do them subconsciously, right? But I think if we start to, like I said, the first step, I believe, is kind of accepting it and recognizing it. And then you might catch yourself, right? And then we might catch ourselves when we do these things. And this is not just the Latinx community, this is the African American community as well, right? And I think that's kind of a starting point, and then moving forward from there.